All right, so let's start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this training session on managing Bamboo. My name is Asad Raza. I'll be hosting this training session for today, and we are here with Jolt. Jolt is an expert in everything DevOps, and today he will be taking us through the fundamentals of Bamboo. Towards the end of this training session, we'll be hosting a Q&A window where you can ask questions regarding the subject matter explored in the session. And now, without further ado, over to you, Joel.
Thank you very much, Assad. Hello, everyone. My name is Zsolt, and I've been helping thousands of software developers in over 98 countries in the last couple of years to level up both in terms of test skills and in soft skills. And my profile is engineering management, software development, and I also deal with DevOps sometimes in case there is an accompanied competency that is required to deliver and deploy solutions. Let me share my screen. So let me see, this is the Zoom software. So share and screen, because I have some slides as well on the topic Bamboo, which is gonna be the main topic for today. We're gonna go on practical as well, because I self-hosted the software in the second half of the presentation, so that you will see what it looks like. So introduction, once again, you can see me in two instances. It's in, no, three instances actually. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can visit my tech blog, zsoltnagy.eu, that's zsoltnagy.eu. I know, complicated name, but at the same time, the content itself is rewarding. And regarding my career site, it's devcareermastery.com. And you can also read some of the free and regular available books as well that I wrote. On top of these, there are some in Amazon and some other marketplaces. So let's see what today's course objectives are gonna be. So first of all, by the end of the course, we will understand the fundamentals of what CICD is good for. So a CICD pipeline is good for. And I will also introduce the fundamentals of Bamboo. So we will implement basically a very simple pipeline in Bamboo that's gonna be linked to a GitHub repository, and you will see Bamboo in action as well. So let's see the lesson breakdown. So in one, we will deal with the fundamentals, the basic concepts of continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and also some other definitions that are going to be linked to Bamboo. So it's going to provide you with the context. In the second lesson, you will understand what Bamboo is, what build agents are, how to install Bamboo, what have been the latest problems with installing Bamboo, or for instance, that might prevent you from getting started and getting hands-on. Because as you know, just watching this lecture will just spike up your interest in trying out Bamboo. And then the next step is gonna happen after this webinar, when you can open your computer and perform the same steps that I showed you, and you could start building taking the ideas a bit further, for instance, opening an AWS account, an Amazon Web Services account, and trying out Bamboo with AWS. So in lesson 2, you will find out how to do the installation. I will not install the software again because there was some troubleshooting as well, and in live there is not enough time for that. And in lesson 3, you will see how Bamboo is executed, at least on my computer right now, and how it's linked to a GitHub repository, how a failing deployment is working, and how completely, well, a perfectly running the repository and tests are displayed in Bamboo when I corrected the failed tests or possibly also the failed code. So this is what's awaiting us. Let's get started with lesson 1. What is CICD? So this is a typical technical interview question, by the way. So if you go to any DevOps interview or even software development interviews, you will see this or you will hear the CI/CD question quite a lot, and you need to remember continuous integration, continuous deployment, and you will also know why. You will also need to know why CI/CD is that important. So the background is that in software development, the trend has been in the last 10, 20 years at least, that we are shortening the software development cycles. You know, there is iterative and incremental development, which means that basically just imagine that you're building a car, for instance, then you can just build the different components. And you can also build the first version, the second version, the third version, and so on of the different components. And this way you do both iterative and incremental development, not only in software development, but also in other, for example, car manufacturing. And in case of this shorter development cycle, the source code is that just imagine that a development team of 5 people works on the source code and different features. There are a lot of feature branches where you branch off from the main master branch of the repository. And then at the end, once a developer completes their task, they submit a so-called pull request or merge request, depending on the environment that you're using, for example, GitHub or GitLab. And then once this pull or merge request is submitted, someone else will have to review your code. Now, once someone reviews your code, afterwards, after the review, this merge makes it back to the master branch. And once we go back to the master branch with the new code, we can run all our tests, obviously, and deploy the updates. In case of, for instance, a Scrum type of environment, or also in Kanban, but rather I would give Scrum as a typical example. We have sprints of equal lengths, let's say 1 week, 2 weeks, or 4 weeks, for instance. And at the end of the sprint, there is basically a deployment and also a demo session where we demo the updates. And when it comes to teamwork, we need to make sure that these merges and deployments happen as often as possible, because if they don't happen, and for example, you went out and developed a feature for 5 months, and in the meantime, there were, let's say, 20 other deployments elsewhere, then what you will need to do at the end is that you will have to merge your code back into master. And in case of the merges, if you're not lucky with the part of code that you modified, you run into a lot of conflicts. And resolving these conflicts, I mean, what happened 6 months ago when someone else deployed something else? It's going to be very complex to follow. And sometimes, back in 2013, actually, I did that when we had an update, basically a refactoring update, where we introduced a new framework to our code base. And I had to ask another developer why he made that change 2 months ago. And that other developer had no idea why that piece of code was written. In fact, I suspected that it was a bug. And just imagine, in that case, you're approaching deployment, there is a deadline, and you have to take care of these random bug fixes. This is just not working. This is why we are shortening the development cycles. This is why we are encouraging merging back to master as often as possible. And this is why we make sure that we minimize the number of conflicts and the severity of the conflicts we have to deal with in one merge. And this is what the CI/CD pipeline is going to aid on some level, at least on the continuous integration, so on the CI level. Because we have to build often, we also have to deploy often. Now, the other part of the problem is deploying to staging and production. First of all, there are some quality standards. You could run linting on your code, meaning that you define your own coding standards and you stick to these coding standards by either auto-correcting or manually correcting the source code. That's one thing. You also have to run unit tests, integration tests, and acceptance tests, for instance. So all your test infrastructure have to be executed before you deploy. The difference, by the way, is that in case of unit tests, you test one piece of functionality, so either one class or one type of application. For example, in a 3-tier, you have a client-side application, you have the server side, and you have the database. In case of integration testing, there are different levels. Actually, you can test how different business objects communicate with each other, or you can test how, for example, the server-side part, so the application business logic, and the database part, for instance, integrate together. And acceptance testing is end-to-end, which means that you check the markup, for example, on client side, you interact with it with an automated tool, for example, Selenium, and then all the modifications result in some changes on the client after a while, but these changes go through the server-side application logic and the database layer as well, so the persistent layer. So with these types of tests, executing these tests take time as well. And if you had to manually execute everything, in that case, there would be an additional time of like running things and interpreting the results manually and so on. So what we want to do is we need to minimize these things. And if you just see that everything is green and we just have a dashboard that, for example, a change was pushed and a pull request was accepted automatically, then a system in the background will start running, and the system will lint, will run the automated tests, will do everything, and then you can just see that everything is green, and you might even get notified via email in, let's say, 1 minute or 5 minutes that the tests have been executed. This is the type of challenge that we are talking about. It is an automation task, so we make sure that a lot of things that we would manually execute are automated, and this saves not only development time, because it's not just about the time, because frankly, executing some of these comments, or some of these commands is not that hard. What is really hard is that you need your attention as well, and you might also need some local resources to run these things. And if you focus your attention on where the automated tests are running, and then you take a coffee break, and then you come back, for instance, and you have to take decisions of what to run, and you have to manually execute a checklist, this results in mental computing power in your brain that you're losing for this type of activity. And this is what we want to automate, because you don't need to follow these things up and take these obvious decisions every single time you deploy. You want to deploy as easily as possible and as often as possible. We will see that sometimes all it takes for a deployment to happen is to accept a pull request, which means that we merge the changes back to the master branch, and the system takes care of the rest, including automatic deployments on condition that all the tests and other criteria pass. But let's not get ahead. Repeated tasks. I talked about running automated tests, right? Code quality checks, that's linting. Merging changes back into the main branch, that could also happen in a way that if you have, for example, a feature branch and you commit, assuming that there are no conflicts, assuming that the tests pass, assuming that everything is correct, regular merges back into master can also be automated. Building the application, it's basically, it can be automated with multiple tools. Actually, if you have a JavaScript Node.js application, for instance, you can use npm to just run a script that builds the application and bundles all the JavaScript files like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and create a distribution folder. This is basically building an application. In case of Java, you can create the packages as well with some comments. And this build process is something that, that can also be automated. Now, deploying code is the next one. Like deploying to where, that's another question, because there is the test and the production server, and also some QA or staging server that you could use. And deployment is something where we have to be very careful. Actually, that's from a DevOps perspective, the number one danger that I have seen in terms of deployment when there were no cloud infrastructure, but in fact, even in cloud, you can deploy to cloud in the same way how you can deploy to a physical server. So in case of the deployment, in some cases, some developers deploy code from their own machine, which means that some of the files are basically, you have no guarantee that you deploy the files that you want to deploy. And if the developer deploys something that's a result of a weird copy, and in that case, they can endanger the company as well. The clean solution is that the deployment goes through a tool such as Bamboo, for instance. It's orchestrated, and it's automated, and the code is built from a repository, for example, what you have on GitHub or GitLab or anywhere else hosted, Bitbucket, and so on. Next item is the pushing the tags. Now, if you develop software, oftentimes in case of the deployment, a deployment is basically linked to a commit in the tree of changes that is basically the latest change. And it contains all the past incremental changes that happen to the software. Once we deploy, we usually have the habit of pushing tags that indicate what was deployed, when was it deployed, and so on, so that you can identify the commit. This is very useful, for example, when you roll back, because imagine that you deploy the change, that change is erroneous, the company starts losing money, and then you have to figure out how to roll back immediately. And in that case, the tag, which means the last deployment before the current deployment, the commit belonging to this last deployment, is going to be identifiable very easily. So this is basically one benefit. So pushing the tags, if it was done manually, after deployment, some developers might forget it. And in that case, I have seen such a software failure that there was an error, and business asked basically that team to roll back. And, oh, but where are the tags? That's a problem. In fact, the real problem there was that that team didn't execute the common sense, basically, way of being able to roll back by recording the last commit hash. It didn't happen manually, and they didn't have the tags either. So they had to start researching where the last commit was that has to be deployed. Like they have to roll back like 10 commits, 15 commits, 20 commits, or what was the last deployment. This is a horrible, horrible thing, especially when the company is losing, let's say, thousands of dollars per minute. Just imagine every minute wasted. If you waste enough time, you could burn your yearly salary, for instance. It's not that ideal. Also, last thing, create reports. All kinds of reports could be created on basically changes that happen to the source code deployments, feature frequency, like feature development and deployment frequency, and so on. And they might even end up in an Atlassian product called Jira. More on this a bit later. So as a solution for this, for automating some of these repeated tasks, there were some concepts introduced. One of the concepts is called continuous integration, or CI in short. That's the CI part of the CICD. So the mantra of continuous integration is that we merge back to the main branch, which I called the master branch so far, as often as possible. This prevents problems with merging changes that are too big and this prevents the Sherlock Holmes type of detective work of what happened a couple of months ago with another branch while we are merging now, because we don't understand the code of the other party. So this continuous integration concept lowers the pressure once the deployment comes, because if you merge a big change, I already told you, there could be trouble because you don't know when the merge will end. In fact, in that 2013 day that I can still remember, it was not even a merge, but a rebase. And in case of a rebase, just imagine that you have to resolve the same conflict over and over and over again in case in case the history requires, because the same part of code was modified a couple of months ago, like 6-7 times. So this is not a good place to be in. And if you want to deploy, let's say on a given Thursday, for instance, and it's 11 o'clock, and the rebasing merging process and the detective work takes, let's say, 2-3 hours, you can very easily get to the end of the process by like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then you deploy, and then you have to stay and be available in case there is a problem. So monitor the system for a while in case it's a critical deployment. You don't want to be in that position, right? So this is why automating and merging as often as possible is critical. It's very, very important. So continuous integration is all about merging back to the main branch often. So integrating your code, making sure that your code is in a deployable state. Well, not necessarily deployable, but at least all the features that have been developed and all the incremental developments end up in the main branch, and you detect conflicts as early as possible and as often as possible. I'm gonna, before introducing the CD part, let's introduce another concept called code artifacts. I mean, artifact as a word, it can mean a lot of things. So for example, if you are used to software design like UML, in that case, any of these UML diagrams or even documentation can be viewed as an artifact. Anything associated with software development. In the context of CD tools and build tools, we're using artifact as something that is compiled for testing and deployment. For example, a bundle file for the distribution, so the dist folder of an application, that's an artifact. But as I said, in general, any information in the context of the software can be used as an artifact, such as documents, diagrams, and even database tables. But here in the CD tools context, we are using this artifact for the bundle that we create in case of the build process. So you can see the fourth bullet point, building the application. Once we build, the result of the build is going to be an artifact, for instance. And using the artifact, our knowledge on the artifact, we can now jump into continuous delivery, because CD, so continuous delivery, is an extension to continuous integration, because once we integrated the code, which means that we got back to the main branch, the release process of the code, so building and deploying, can be automated. And this is continuous delivery, the automated delivery of the application code, the artifact that we build, and the delivery itself includes the deployment as well. However, deployment is a manual process in case of continuous delivery. So this means that you have to push a button to execute the deployment itself. And this will still be a very, very easy thing, because pushing a button manually, it's an additional security that you intend the deployment. if it was automated, the danger is that just imagine that update finds its way back to the master branch, aided by continuous integration. The continuous delivery tools find out that the tests, so basically, even in the integration, the tests execute and the code can be merged into master. That's fine, that's perfect. You can see that the code is in a deployable state. And if it was automated, every single time you merge something back to the master branch, because it can be merged, the code will find its way to production, and you could have deployment very often. And the problem with this is that you need to have a very mature development process to make this happen without major issues, because an error can be made at any time. And the automated tests themselves and the code coverage itself is not sufficient to make sure that your system works as expected. You need quality assurance for that, a test hierarchy, where I would basically encourage to build a complete behavior-driven development based test hierarchy, where each top-level test is linked to a use case scenario deliverable, and the acceptance tests, the integration tests, and the unit tests are also linked. So in case a small unit test fails anywhere, even business people will be able to figure out, or other stakeholders, which feature is not functioning perfectly at a given point in time. And then the information will propagate back to engineering, and they will be able to fix the error as fast as possible. So that's something where the continuous deployment, which is gonna be, which is basically another extension, automatized continuous delivery. This can be made reality. So if you have proper QA and you have automated process for basically everything, accompanied by so basically with software development and integration, delivery, and quality standards, then continuous deployment means that if all your tests pass, then code will make it to the live system automatically. Everything will be deployed automatically. This is, so hopefully you see what kind of maturity is needed from a software development process point of view to make this happen. In companies of size hundreds or thousands, oftentimes they don't reach or don't even want to reach this continuous deployment phase. This is why when we have CICD, we focus on continuous integration, we focus on continuous delivery. That's it. And we don't need the deployment part that much. I didn't talk about the creation of the accompanying reports. What kind of reports are we talking about? For example, imagine that you have a CI/CD tool such as Bamboo, and you want to see the utilization of the tool, like how often the server is utilized, what kinds of resources you need, or whether some of the processes that are automated take too much resources. You can see these in the reports, for instance. All right, let's see some CI/CD pipeline software that you might have heard of, because Bamboo is one. We will soon get into it a bit more deeply. Bamboo is a software by Atlassian. Bitbucket and Bitbucket pipelines are also Atlassian products, so you can visit them and consider them. They are basically online hosted solutions, and you can use them similarly to, let's say, GitLab, for instance. It's kind of interesting that GitHub didn't have automated a CI. Even today, it's like an integration with another tool. But given that Microsoft purchased GitHub, we have the competition started between GitHub and GitLab, as far as I can see, because with GitHub, there are new features coming, that are already there in GitLab. For example, the CICD is something that I noticed on GitHub not too long ago. Talking about GitLab, there is GitLab CICD that you can use. There is GitHub Pipelines, that's the new name of the GitHub product. Jenkins is a very popular free solution. And there is Travis CI, and for the Azure products, there is Azure Pipelines. So we have seen the main 4 concepts: continuous integration, which means that software can always be integrated; continuous delivery, which is software is always deployable. With these 2 concepts, you can answer the CI/CD interview question. And for plus points, you can mention continuous deployment, that deployment is automatic. And in case of continuous delivery and deployment, we also learned the phrase the concept of artifacts, where that in this context, it means nothing else but the bundle that we deploy and create during the build process. So we create it during the build process, then we deploy it. Moving on to lesson 2. So as I introduced Bamboo already as a CI/CD tool, and I described what you can expect from a CI/CD tool, you could have more or less an idea of what Bamboo is good for in general. Bamboo has agents. These agents are basically the tools that take care of some of the tasks, such as running a script, automating something else that you would do manually, for example, a Git checkout, or a branch merge, or a deployment to whatever folder of a whatever server, or integrating with, you can even integrate it with Jira, for instance, because Jira and Bamboo are both Atlassian products, so it can manipulate some Jira tickets and give some additional information, enrich the Jira experience. And you can also use Bamboo in the context of Amazon Web Services. So, introduction of Bamboo for the 4th or 5th time: continuous integration, delivery, and deployment tool. You can achieve them all with Bamboo to test, build, and release code. And although Bamboo is a Java tool, so it was written in Java, it supports multiple technologies. So for example, in my case that I'm going to present to you quite soon, I used JavaScript testing with Mocha and Chai. So it works with Java, JavaScript, C#, a lot of different Python. Basically, you can use it for any code because you can manage GitHub repositories with it. In fact, if you wrote a book, for instance, in Markdown on GitHub, then you can do the same. You can also manage it, although it's kind of pointless to use Bamboo for that very small purpose, but you can manage it. Bamboo agents, so as I said, they take care of tasks that can be automatized and enrich the experience of software developers. This is a new trend, by the way, for software developers, that you often have a dedicated software developer experience person or team in larger companies who takes care of making sure that software developers use their mental capacity on tasks that are related to software development, and not these repetitive tasks of executing these infrastructure-related things like that a CI/CD tool can easily execute. Because it's not necessarily IQ or coding intelligence or being smart that's a real power, but rather focus. So if you can focus on what you can do the best, you're going to be more effective in general. This is why Bamboo's price tag, for example, can be justified by many companies, because they provide their developers with a better developer experience while they build, test, and deploy their code. It automatically detects branches, changes in the code, and so on. We will see that I will change something in a GitHub repository quite soon, and it will start running the Bamboo process, and then you will see a red, so an erroneous test case to change into green automatically without me doing anything. So all I did was I pushed something to the master branch in this case, because it's a simplified process. I didn't go through the, or I won't go through to the like pushing to another branch and pull request and whatever else. It's coming very soon. I just have a couple of things to say about build agents, then we go to the installation, and then we jump into the code in the last 15-20 minutes. So, or code and Bamboo. Types of build agents, you will see the local build agent where it's hosted on the same computer where the Bamboo software is. Unfortunately, it does not scale, so it's good for learning purposes mainly, which means that once you finish this webinar, if you don't have any other obligations to do, then you grab a computer with internet connection, you can download Bamboo, you can register to Atlassian, and you get a 1 month free trial, I think. I think it's 1 month. And you can use Bamboo locally for the duration of that 1 month and get some hands-on experience with it. I would really encourage you to do so, so that a lot of things will stay relevant to you afterwards as well, and you can tell yourself that, you can tell others as well that that you have some hands-on experience with the topic. So this is what the local build agent is good for. Remote build agent, it's hosted on a server, and the difference between remote and cloud build agent, so both are remote actually, but the difference between remote and cloud is that the remote stays on even if it's not used for creating a build. So if the Bamboo software is unused because there is no tasks that can be automated at a given point in time, then the server is still running, but it's not utilized. So that's a remote build agent. Actually, it's not the Bamboo software, but the build agent is not utilized because the Bamboo software itself is hosted elsewhere, but the build agent gives you the resources to perform certain tasks. Cloud build agent, you spin up a server, and that server is created for the purpose of the build. Once the build and the associated other tasks that can be automated is terminated with success or failure, then you just shut down the server and that's it. Basically, you don't waste resources and you don't pay for these resources either because you're not using it for any purpose. So these are the 3 build agents. Now, let's jump into the features of Bamboo. So what we will do is we'll check out the features of Bamboo, then we will see the installation of Bamboo, and then running Bamboo. So this is basically what's left from this webinar as some practice. Because I don't want to jump back and forth between the slides, I will just highlight your attention on this error 1 and error 5 in the installation, which are typical errors. Error 1 is about update your Java. Error 5, run as administrator. So these 2 typical errors were the ones that I will also show you quite soon about the problems with Bamboo installation. So before showing you Bamboo, let me walk you through the main features. So this is the Atlassian page. This is where you can see Jira, this administration system that comes very handy with software development especially, but possibly in other use cases as well. And with Bamboo, here you will see this in action as well, actually. So this part, these are the build agents. So AWS code deploy command, Docker. You can see a lot of different things that can be automated. Then you have the deployment projects. So we have different environments, releases, and so on. We will see that in action as well. And with the dedicated build agents, the agents themselves, actually these are not necessarily called build agents, these are just the sub bar tasks that are in there. You can have dedicated agents that perform a certain task, and basically you can also have some integration. What I won't show you today, but I can encourage you to try it out, is that if you have a Jira ticketing system, you have these keys here, these ticket keys. The Bamboo automation can be linked to Jira as well. So that's a very nice sales page, actually, on some level, or like feature description page. It's well written. I encourage you to read that. Now, next part is the installation. Getting started with Bamboo, it's very obvious. You just download it. And once it's started, it's going to be accessible on localhost 8085. You need to have an Atlassian registration with it. So register yourself to Atlassian first. And once you finish the registration, then afterwards you can get started with Bamboo by first starting Bamboo with the terminal. And then after you start Bamboo, you need to add a license key. And afterwards, the code is going to run in your browser, which we will see quite soon. By the way, here, this was all we needed is, for example, in Windows, you have this start-bamboo.batch file. So this is something that is so, but I think I tried to start it in another terminal, and by accident, you can see the system error 5 that I told you about. Access is denied because I didn't run this this command line in administrator. So you can see git cmd, that's the tool that I'm running as a command line, and here I'm running it as an administrator, and here it's working. So that's the difference. Let's move on to the configuration. So in the configuration, you have different plans, different options. I will clear everything so that you can see. I will move the rest down. Here you can see some red and green stuff because I was already creating some track record for past deployments. You can see that, for example, number 13 was my last attempt to do something with Bamboo. That's an automated way of running Bamboo. Unfortunately, I have to log back in. So what is going to happen now is I will stop sharing my screen for a while, which I have to see how to do in this tool. So wish I could use this system a bit better. This is the only thing I didn't think about because originally I thought that everything is working fine with the login. Mute my audio, stop video, that's it. So hopefully you cannot see me anymore. Your new share. I think you cannot see me. So I will log in. Actually, I can share my screen again because the sensitive part is already and it's like just a simple password field. So you can see my screen again, and I have my login name, and I'm gonna log in, and hopefully it's gonna work now. No, it doesn't. That's interesting. Let me see if it's working. Hopefully it does, because if not, then there is something wrong with the software. But at least you can see Bamboo running, and now it's taking a bit longer for Bamboo to log in, which means that my request is being processed and it's not rejected anymore. So you will soon see the results. So there you go, test number, build number 13, and for some reason it keeps coming back, this right part. So you can see test number 13, and there was one failure in it, and one of the tests failed. So this is something that was erroneous in the code, and you can already see it in here that it's linked to this commit. So if we go to the commit, we can check what's wrong. And in the commit, you can see that 1 hour ago, I edited this automated test from it should always or also pass, like expect true to be true, to it should fail, expect true to be false, right? So this is kind of an obvious change. And well, we could do git reset, or we could just push a change. So here we have build number 13 in all build plans. Let's go to build. So we have build number 13. That's the latest build out of all the possible builds. So we can have more than 13 builds, obviously. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the test folder, and I will edit this file on GitHub right away because it has an editor as well. You don't have to use, for example, Atom or anything to change this. I will make the test pass, so true, expect true to be true. So it should also pass. I will just revert the changes basically and commit the changes. And the commit goes directly to the master branch this time. Now, if we go to the build, all build plans, you can see that the build is still number 13. And now I will talk for a while because I would like to show you that I'm doing absolutely nothing on the Bamboo interface. In fact, all I did was I pushed this commit to GitHub. So what should happen with this test is this test suite, you can see that 32 seconds ago, a change was pushed. And this was my latest commit from 32 seconds ago. And if you go back, you can already see that something is being updated. So Bamboo is working. It automatically detected that code came back to the master branch and the master branch was updated. And this will work for a while, executing the automated tests, creating the build and deploying. I will soon walk you through these different tasks that I created. And once this is done, you will see a number 14 magically appear in the build. And obviously, I don't know how much time it's going to take for Bamboo to run this. Last time it was 6 seconds, by the way. So it's just a live webinar where it has to take more time, obviously. But in order to utilize the time, I can show you in another tab something different. And by the way, here you can already see build number 14 appear. So actually build 14, just as I moved away, build number 14 appeared, and now it's green. So you can see that all I did was I changed a failing test to a passing test. In reality, what you do is you change your code so that your failing test passes. And Bamboo executed the changes. It reported 0 failures. And given that all the tests passed, we can simply deploy the code. By the way, an artifact dist was created, and that artifact can be deployed. So that's the main idea behind this pipeline. Now, what I did with this specific pipeline, actually I put everything in the default, that's not optimal. First of all, I checked out the source code. So in Bamboo, you can do a checkout default repository, and the repository itself was this Mocha Bamboo integration. By the way, as soon as you connect Bamboo with GitHub, you have a drop down of connected repositories that you added to Bamboo. Now here you have some other options like force clean build and so on, and you can also add other repositories. That's step number one. Step number two, we have to install the packages, the node modules that are described in the repository. So if I go to the repository, you can see package.json. Here you have the dependence. Actually, these are just dev dependencies. You could have normal dependencies as well. The npm-i stands for npm install. It installs the chai, the Mocha, and the Mocha Bamboo reporter packages. And it goes to the node modules folder, by the way. So if you had a development build, for example, I can show this to you on Atom. This is my development environment. You see Mocha, chai, and this other, and a lot of other things actually in the node modules folder, because Mocha, chai, and so on also have dependencies, and these are also installed. So this is what npm install does. It is automatically performed by Bamboo. Where is it performed? That's the million-dollar question. It's performed where Bamboo is hosted. So, for example, if you have a Bamboo installation locally, then there is a folder inside where the software is checked out and built, and the dependencies are installed and the software is built. But before building, I used this Mocha test runner to run the tests. This is why we installed the package Mocha Bamboo reporter, by the way, not for the running the test, but for reporting purposes. So you have the Mocha test runner, and then you have the Mocha test parser. Here you have some configuration, like where can you find Mocha? You can find it in node module /mocha/bin/mocha, and you use the test folder. Because this is where you can find the test, and you want to run Mocha on all the JavaScript test files of the test folder. So this is what this run test with Mocha does. The next one, parse Mocha tests and create a JSON file that gives you a cool report that can be displayed by Bamboo as well. And this report is somewhere. So total tests 2 and agent, default agent. Let's see the tests. This JSON file is parsed somewhere. So you have the latest commit as well, artifacts, and you will have the logs. So it took 6 seconds here as well. That's kind of interesting. But in case of the tests, see detailed test results for default job. Yeah, this is where you will see the tests actually. So this report is parsed, and you can see the green. So both tests passed, and you could even link these things with Jira. So for example, if you go to build number 13. So let's go back to build 13. You can see that it's not as green as it used to be. Now it's red because one of the tests failed. Now you go to tests, there is a test report, assertion error, expected true to be false. How surprising. Now here you can simply create a Jira issue, a ticket that, listen, there is this test failing, please fix it. And then the development team gets the ticket and they will fix the issue. You can monitor it from this tool quite easily. So yeah, that's basically how Jira can be linked with Bamboo. Well, not how it can be linked, but how you can control Jira tickets with Bamboo. And then the last part is the build process. I had a script in the application, npm run build prod, using Node.js. It's basically a script that you can see. Here, I just did a dummy thing. So I had the test suite.js in the application, and just copied it to dist/bundle.js in a Windows environment. So this is just some fake deployment on my own computer, but basically I could move these files on Bamboo locally. This means to you that you can also move the files to AWS, or you can move it to your own server, Heroku, and so on. As a very last thing, let me show you one configuration, like what kind of capabilities you have in the add task, just an enumeration. You saw this already, like artifact downloads and so on. You have all the options, cooperation with Docker, Mocha. Actually, I use these two for JavaScript, Node.js as well, npm, so you can run npm scripts. You can run PHP unit tests and so on, and also web server can be started. So it's there are a lot of different task types that you can execute and configure your build agent in such a way that it automates whatever needs to be automated. It's kind of interesting that there are some outdated things such as Bower. It's not used that often anymore, but at the same time, some of the tools are very useful. Instead of Mocha, a lot of people use Jest nowadays. That's another missing part in JavaScript, and you might find your own missing task type in Java, for instance. But at the same time, you can create your custom tasks as well. So that was basically Bamboo as an introduction, CICD, and the basics of Bamboo, and also some practice, linking it with the GitHub repository. If you have any questions, please let me know. I will stay online. And thank you for your attention.
All right, so now we have moved on to the question and answer window for this training session. So if there are any questions, please go ahead. All right, so I can see there are no questions at this time. So for all the attendees, we will be sending you a recorded version of this training session. Thank you, Jolt, for conducting this training session. And we definitely look forward to seeing you in our next session.
Right, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Asad, for hosting the webinar. Take care.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.